This is one of the most awesome hacks I've run into, and Rob Kersting came up with it. Here's the kayak motor on. Here's the kayak motor off. How about that for an easy on and off? There's some tricks to making this thing, so stay tuned. Here's everything you're going to need to do this hack. I've already done some of the cuts because I don't want to waste your time and show you all that, but it all starts with an 1.5-inch tube, then 1.25 inch, and you need a couple of these T-bolts. You need the long ones, these are 3 inches, as well as a couple short 1-inchers. You need a clip, and depending on how you want to lock down one side, you need one of these straps or one of these ties. Then to make the mount for the motor itself, you need a couple bolts to join these together. So there were some issues in terms of configuring all this. Let's talk through that next, because otherwise you'll make some mistakes. I've already cut this off, but let me show you the critical sizing. I decided how far I wanted this to hang out over the left-hand side of my kayak. Then I put a T-bolt in here and made sure that one of the holes where I'm going to bolt this down lined up with my utility track. Then I was able to decide where to actually cut this. First, critical measurement. You don't want to have a situation where you don't want to have a hole to hold this down. This is going to hold it down on this side. Once you figure out which hole you're going to use over on the right-hand side of your kayak to be able to hold it down over there, now you're faced with how are you going to lock it down over here? Because you can't just put a bolt through the hole, because this is going to slide in there. So you've got two choices. First, you can take a piece of strapping and then you can bend it up, put that over the tube and lock that down with a couple bolts on the nuts on the T-bolts. I decided I didn't like this. What I would rather do, because it fits exactly on the tube, is take one of these T-connectors, pop that on, and then take a piece of household wire. This is 12-gauge wire, and I'm going to put that over each of the T-bolts, put a nut on there, and lock this down. Then it's going to look good. Now the next thing you've got to do is to decide how long you want the slide. So figure it doesn't really need to be as long as I've got it. The key thing is to make sure you have enough overhang to be able to deal with your motor. So I decided to make this pretty much an exact fit to where my motor can be as close to the boat as possible to keep from tipping more to the left. The farther out the motor is to the left, the increased tip you're going to get. So I wanted to keep it close to the center line. Then to attach it, what you got to do, where's my clip? Found it. You got to get one of these little clips, or you can use a bolt that's the size of your smaller tube. The diameter of these holes is 5/16, so you don't want to go bigger than that. But then what you want to do, again, while you size this, is make sure that it lines up so some of the holes will line up, because that's where you're going to put the clip through to be able to lock this thing down. And then once the clip is in there, of course, this isn't going to come out. It is going to wiggle a little bit, and if you use a bolt with 5/16, it probably will minimize that a little bit, but I'm not really worried about a little bit of wiggle like this. Now the next thing, and this is where I made a mistake, is sizing your overhang. On Rob's solution, he used a cutting board on either side to give his trolling motor something to lock onto. I had this HDPE left over, so I figured I would use that, and I cut the holes to line up with the holes on my pieces of pipe. But let me show you the critical mistake I made that is going to cause me to, instead of using that, I'll basically just drop a bolt down through and I'll lock these pieces together like this and then clamp my trolling motor to it. So here's the little mistake I made, not enough to where I wanted to go redo it, but I only wanted to have the minimum overhang, and you can see that this fits in here nicely. I've got plenty of room for this side of the trolling motor clamp to work. But when I went to try and put the HDPE on, you can see that the heads of these bolts are going to be in the way of the clamp. So if you are going to use the cutting board solution or use anything to attach the two sections like this instead of over the top like I did, be sure you have this large enough to where the clamps don't come down on the bolts. A little lesson learned. Be sure you line up the holes, and the best way to do that is to have the production end and the production end of both pieces together. Then the holes will line up exactly. Notice that I've got a washer on the end of each of these bolts, and I'm going to put another washer on this side and use a locking nut to go ahead and attach these. Now, full disclosure, this doesn't fit in there exactly, so you can see that there is some vibration. You can minimize this by taking a piece of that strapping, cutting it off, and then sliding it in. And that minimizes it quite a bit. Not enough to make this a bad hack. The convenience of being able to pull this thing off far outweighs this little amount of motion. And when your motor is under power, it's going to move that forward anyway, and it's not going to be an issue. So thanks again to Rob Kersting for sharing this great hack that I could make a video of and get it out to you guys. I think this is awesome. This is what I'm going to use for my kayak motor, and I'm going to go ahead and put a mount up here on the top where I can put a utility track on here and have additional stuff in the back of my kayak. What do you guys think? I think this is awesome. Take care.